Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Becky, I'm the Chief Exec of the English Association, and I'm really pleased to be hosting our session this afternoon on reigniting reading with Love Reading for Schools. I'm just going to do a quick word about the EA before we get to the good stuff. So we are a learner society and a subject association, which was founded in 1906 to support, promote and celebrate the discipline of English studies. We cover all stages of education, from primary and early years through to secondary education, further, higher and beyond, and we cover all parts of the discipline across language, linguistics, literature and creative writing. Events like this one are made possible by the fantastic contribution of our volunteer speakers. So my deep gratitude goes out to Sana and Deborah for joining us this afternoon. Thank you for being so generous with your time. Our members also make it possible to keep these events free and open to all by paying their membership fees. So if you would like to contribute to the national conversation about English and help support our discipline, please do consider joining us. Membership starts from just £29 for the year, and this enables you to support our events and campaigning work for a whole year. And you also get access to a range of member benefits, including online access to all our journals. Right, that's enough from me. So now I'm going to hand over to Deborah. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Hi, everybody. Lovely to have you here with us this afternoon. I'm Deborah Maclaren, and I'm the Chief Exec of Love Reading and Love Reading for Kids. We are here today, Sana and I, to talk about reigniting reading for pleasure, and it's never been more important than ever before. And we're going to show you this afternoon how the tools that we've built and the content that we have created can nourish that reading for pleasure culture with lots of community fundraising, wish lists, and purpose-driven support. So welcome. And thank you so much to Becky for inviting us and to the EA for hosting this. So most of you may well have heard of Love Reading for Kids, but you might not know about our recent developments. We now have, as well as our book recommendations, a bookstore with social purpose. And every book purchased helps fund reading for pleasure in our schools. We also have a brand new Reading for Schools portal, which enables schools to fundraise and build their own library. So really it is a one-stop shop and hub for reading for pleasure. So far, we've donated £100,000 worth of books to schools across the UK. And with the year of reading ahead, we are on a mission to partner and reignite reading for pleasure, because we all know, I mean, everyone here, we know it transforms lives, empathy, well-being, and life chances for children and young people. So I'm here with Sana, who is going to introduce herself whilst I get the portal ready, and we can show you what some of the things where we've done, and we can talk you through this afternoon. Sana.
Hello, and again, thank you both for having me here today. So I'm joining Deborah this afternoon just to sort of speak to you all about how love reading can actually be utilised as a tool in a school setting. I've been an educator, worked in schools, both in the UK and internationally, for over a decade. So I am very aware of some of the sort of issues that teachers face, but also the importance of reading. So yeah, very excited to speak to you all this afternoon. Deborah's also, I think she's may have forgotten to mention, or will have mentioned, that we will also be taking questions throughout the webinar as well. So if you do have a question, please pop it in the chat and we'll sort of try and go through it towards the end, or as and when we can throughout the presentation.
So let us talk you through Love Reading for Kids. So this is the forward-facing element of the website. We've got tens and tens of thousands of parents, carers, librarians logging in and accessing all of the tools and the content that we are creating every single day for to help kids, young people find their next favourite book. So for non-fiction November, we've got star books, we've got all sorts of features that we're creating, really with the content calendar of areas. So everything from Armistice Day to top tips for writing book reviews. So we're constantly, speaking to the team and going, okay, let's cover the awards. let's cover these key areas, but what else could we need? What else might people in schools need when we're creating this content? Do you want to talk a little bit about some of those areas that have meant a lot to you, Sana?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, the biggest takeaway whenever I watch a webinar like this or sort of speak to people is the CPD. It's always what am I going to get out of this? What can I actually do? And what can I learn and take away that I can use with me in my everyday to day life? And for me, the biggest thing with Love Reading was basically it's a wealth of a library of sorts in itself, because there's so much content on there that as an educator, I can just then plug and play. For example, Deborah talked about the amazing blog articles that she's currently going through at the moment. So again, as an educator, if I was planning a scheme of work, I could then dip into what's going on at the moment, what's very current, what's happening, and click on that to sort of browse a content feed. As an educator, again, if I'm then taking over a new year group of learners, or develop my own CPD, I can then look through the books that are available that are curated specifically for age readers. Now, this could happen through, a particular child in my class that I was trying to plan for. If I had a child who had some, additional needs, for example, neurodivergence, and they may have a particular topic that they're hyper-focused on, I could go in and think, right, what might be applicable for my 9-year-old boy who has, a sport hyperfixation that he's currently going through, or, whatever it might be. You could also use it to enhance your own subject knowledge. So as a teacher, I might find that actually I'm well versed in sort of Key Stage 2 books, but now I'm teaching Key Stage 1 and I don't have any idea what those kind of books look like. To enhance my own subject knowledge, I might look at sort of books maybe related to younger children. So lots of the curated book lists are linked to the Oxford Reading Tree, and that could then be used to support learners who maybe are off the book banded system and are kind of just making their first sort of tiptoe steps into the wider world of literature. So there's some fantastic book recommendations there. Again, they're all thematic as well as age related, and they're all there really to support learning. Love Reading does a fantastic job at developing some engaging content with diversity as well. So again, Deborah talked about what might be happening with current affairs at the moment. We've just had Black History Month recently, and there's again a curated list of books there particularly for that. And what I love about Love Reading is the fact that the range of books are not just older books, but also new and upcoming books from newer authors as well. And again, they're all there to support teachers where they're learning. Deborah, I'm just going to also talk about the fact that it's not just for teachers and schools, but also for us as individuals, as adults. There's some fantastic recommendations for books. So again, as adults, we often need that time away from a screen. We often look for sort of recommendations for maybe our colleagues. It might be a Christmas present that's coming up for your Secret Santa. There's all sorts of bits there for you as well. So yeah, I mean, the fact that we've got newer books that have been published, older books, and the fact that as a teacher, I can just add that to my basket and send that off to my, PTA group to, fund our books or up level our Christmas, our classroom for Christmas. We've got some fantastic books there. There's also a picture book, which Deborah's just picking up on cue, that I could then read to my class on a Friday afternoon, which is again very, very linked to theme. So I don't even have to go out there and actually find a book and wait for the book to be delivered. I can just use books that currently exist as well for a story time activity. So that's one of the
things. Sorry,
sorry, go on. No,
yeah, one of the things that I think a lot of practitioners are using it for is the age rating. So this one, for example, we've read it, you can see our review, all of the metadata from the publisher is there, but we've given it our own review and our own age rating. So that means that teachers, librarians are able to go, okay, right, this is 3+, 5+. They can decide which reading corner, which part of the library this might sit into. And we've also got the read and extract. So any book that we review and recommend, and we are reading 75 to 100 children's books a month because we're helping you keep up to date with everything that's coming out. So that reading extract is a great way of saying, okay, let me have a look at what that page looks like, what that book looks like, so that you're not going out buying it and going, oh, do you know what, that's sort of not what I wanted. It's, that's not going to be right for my cohort or my class. It's really giving you a feel for the pictures, the imagery, the illustration, the words on a page, and enabling you to make a decision about, is that the right book for me? So yeah, absolutely. So this is Love Reading for Kids. This powers Love Reading for Schools. So as we mentioned before, by using Love Reading and Love Reading for Kids, people can donate to a school. So when they add it to their basket, let's say they bought this book and they view their basket, and you can see there's a few little gems sitting there in the basket waiting to be purchased. When you check out, this is a purchase for £112. 25% of that can be donated to a school close to your heart. So I can donate it to my daughter's school or my son's school or my niece's school. If I'm a practitioner, I can donate it to my own school or my community school. We have schools who are part of a federation or a foundation or a MAT, and they're donating it to one of those schools, maybe the school that can't afford reading for pleasure titles. So this is very much around community and using that system that we have built to give back at no cost to you. So we get 10% off as standard, and then 25% you can donate to somebody who really, really needs it. That appears in that school's dashboard straight away, and I'll show you what that dashboard looks like in a minute, so that they can start spending that on reading for pleasure books. So we've really tried to think about what that looks like. We know, I've spent over a decade in schools as a school governor, and we know, I sit there in governor meetings going, we can't afford books. We're having discussions about whether we can any longer afford our librarian. Really having discussions about heating or books, and it's not a great place to be. So when we developed this, we really knew we wanted to build something that really could be scalable, that would enable communities to really support their local school, that would enable schools and give the schools the tools to be able to get their communities behind them. So this is the school portal page. Every school, we have 14,000 schools in the UK signed up to the portal. And when they log in, it's their own individual page specifically for them. And there are lots of things that they can do here. They can still do the search and look for books and authors that perhaps they're looking to engage with. They can engage with their social style dashboard here. And so when they log in, this is, look, we know you haven't got much time. You're juggling a million things. So the whole idea is that when a school logs in, and they can have multiple people, you can manage the admins, and they can invite as many people who are involved with literacy in a setting to collaborate and contribute to this. They can buy books directly from here. They can check how much money is on their dashboard waiting to be spent. So this school's got £15. They can invite their communities to follow them and follow them on that school home journey, about helping parents and carers at home embed that reading for pleasure culture at home. So we've really enabled it to flow across the settings. But the main feed really is all of the new content that we're creating that is relevant to practitioners. So you can just see some of the articles. Obviously, the NLT published the first in a new series of reports yesterday about multimodal reading. We've covered that off. We have the NFER report on high sense schools, what that means. The CLPE just announced their latest in their Reflecting Realities about representation in children's books. We published that. We're creating content all of the time to help people find the right books for the right child at the right time. And so we create these sort of collections across a content calendar of areas that we think will help practitioners find the right book for the right child, whatever their need is, whatever stage that child is at. So there's our webinar that we're on right now. Arms to Stay. It's also about sharing best practice. So we work with all of the major charities in this space. So we were at the school library in awards a couple of weeks ago. We talked about in this feature about the validity of those awards, how brilliant they are for CPD. And we're also talking to the 3 winners of those awards, and we're going to be interviewing those over the coming weeks so that we're sharing best practice and we're sharing brilliant stories of what schools are doing to really embed that reading for pleasure culture in their setting.
Yeah, Deborah, to add, I mean, it's fantastic CPD, again, as an educator who might not have English as a subject specialism. If I was looking to develop that, I could then very quickly go and, have a look at what the latest CPD is. If I, as an English educator or head of subject for a school, was then delivering some content or doing some CPD, I could then use this or use some of these articles as almost a signpost to how I could better support teachers. I mean, in my previous roles, I have supported early career teachers, and I have to say that it's a fantastic almost place that I can just dip in, find something that's relevant and give that as some information for an early career teacher to read, and also just somebody who's very sort of in the system but just needs to catch up and see what's going on, because the landscape is changing ever so quickly. There's always so much going on, and it's just a great place to be able to drop in and take something from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really try to keep our finger on the pulse of what is happening. So everything from curriculum and assessment review to the Carnegie medals, right through to what support do schools need in terms of finding those books? What's happening about AI? Even things like we had a lot of schools recently speaking to us about when adolescents came on TV, trying to create a collection of books to support those sort of discussions, those challenging discussions in schools. I also recently did a training course on racial equity, and I was there where the trainer was basically talking about how actually some of the schools they're saying that whole piece is actually just as a challenge as safeguarding. So we did a collection on that. So we absolutely are trying to, alongside a content calendar of things like Armistice Day, Black History Month, and all of those non-fiction November, all of those standard events across the year that are important for schools, trying to think where else do teachers, do librarians, do literacy experts, how can we help them keep up to date with the best books being published? And also, our team of experts who are reviewing these books are always saying, when let's say they've read a title, they go, okay, what will that fit within? How does that fit into the context of that school setting? Perhaps we might create a brand new collection of titles that might support in that area.
Deborah, to add to that, one of the questions that I get asked the most as an educator is, how can I support my child with their reading? What can I do? How can I recommend something? And something I personally use a lot is, like you said, those book lists. I've often signposted teachers to have a look at these are the curated books that we've got. Have a look at reading through these book lists. What can we do to better further your child and in their learning? Because I think, bookshops nowadays, especially if you go in, they can be, quite overwhelming, especially as a parent or a teacher, who doesn't have much access to what's going on in the wider world, what kind of books are being published. Books are being published all the time. And it's just like you said earlier, having your finger on the pulse and seeing what's relevant, what's current. And that doesn't mean that we don't, recommend the classics. Of course we do. But it's just very nice to have a place that I could just go in, find the book that I want, to know that it's there rather than have to then place it on order if I did go in a traditional bookshop. And also the fact that we've got this quick turnaround is fantastic. So yeah.
Yeah, this is just one example. So every year, our team of experts create a list of book recommendations for every year group. And the whole idea behind this is one, let's say you have got a class library and you're looking to update that class library. This is a brilliant place to start. And what we look at when we create this list of books is here are some brilliant, inspirational, quality texts that are perfectly pitched for that year group. So they're not necessarily the big blockbuster titles, but they will be real inclusive, diverse selection of books where all children can find themselves reflected. And we update them every year. Some come off if they're out of print, some might pop on, but it's a great place to start if you're looking at investing in that class library. And the brilliant thing about this is that let's say the teacher might say, well, actually, we want a class library. We can add that list to our basket at the click of a button. We can add that list to my school's page. So when you're saying to parents and carers, if you're looking at buying books for your children at home, here are some brilliant recommendations. And if you buy them from Love Reading for Kids, don't forget that you can donate 25% of your spend to us as a school. So this creates a brand new funding stream for schools who can't really afford to buy books. We know the CLP research a couple of years ago, I think it was, said that 60% of classrooms don't have a budget for books. This is a good way to create that budget for books. You can also download it as a PDF. You can disseminate that at parents' evenings and really try to create that love of books from both sides. As well as the year group lists, we have a lot of curriculum areas. So, just the history lists, you can see just how wide-ranging they are. PSHE, of course, is a growing area. We've got a lot of titles there about supporting, particularly maybe in secondary, some of those really challenging discussions. And we're adding to this all the time. So here's just some of the STEM.
Deborah, just like you said, I think it's really important to have that place, because I think one thing that as educators we don't have much of is time. And I think where Love Reading has put so much love and energy into curating all of these things for us, it's very much makes it my job to, I can just go and use it as a portal, as a drop and, go just to something I need to tap in. And, ideally there's so much in there, but I then am able to go and say, right now, today, for this particular afternoon, I need this. However, I know a particular learner might need this, a colleague might be developing a scheme of work. That's how they can use it. So ultimately there's something in it for everybody at every stage of their journey, whether you're a parent, a child, an educator. And I think, it's all really about bringing us together for our collective goal, which is just to reignite that passion for reading and getting our children picking up books all the time. And again, we've had conversations of what that looks like. But I think the way that the world is going, we're trying to unplug and we're trying to just go back and develop that love of reading. I think Love Reading really does say what it does on the tin. So, yeah.
That's great. And then the other thing we're able to do, again, as a way of creating a funding stream, is that a school can browse the website and add books to a wish list as they're browsing. So we've had schools, for example, say, we'd love to study Beetle Boy as a year class text for year 6, but actually we can't afford a full set of them. The click of a button, they can create a wish list. They can say how many copies they'd like. They can copy that link and share it with that class, with their school, with their community, with their parents, their carers, their governors, and ask for people to gift that book to them. Similarly, if you want to do something bigger and have a library improvement program, you can just browse, add books. Let's say you've just read about another brilliant book, you type it in there, and it's that easy to add it to your wish list. Now, the brilliant thing about the wish list is the school gets the free book and they get the 25% cash back. So we recently had a school in Northamptonshire. In fact, they use They use this all year round, and I think they must be about 200 free books have been gifted through their use of this. So last Christmas they said, we ask that you don't gift our teachers for the Christmas presents. Would you please gift us a book for their library? The end of the school year in July, they asked for people to donate to their school page, their school dashboard, to give them books, give them to cash to buy Reading for Pleasure books. That's something else they could do. They could create a fundraiser of as a way of donating money. So we've really tried to say, look, we have got a funding crisis in our schools. We've got, in some instances, really engaged communities who want to support Reading for Pleasure. Let's help them. So they could create a fundraiser. Let's say they really want to relaunch their library. They can create a fundraiser there and just click that link. We had a school a couple of weeks ago that create a QR code from this fundraiser, and they were taking it along their local high street and asking businesses if they would like to donate money. And, they've done a great job in getting people behind them. The important thing to say is this is great for schools that have a engaged community, that have got families who can afford to buy books. What we have as part of this is we've got a Love Reading for School Funding for Schools scheme, where schools with deprivation can apply for funding. So we this week announced that we have donated £1,000 to a school in Manchester with severe deprivation. They're about 45% are free school meals. They've got about 35% of their children have SEN. By the time they get to the end of Key Stage 2, only 45% of their children are at the expected reading level. So they need help, they need support, but they didn't have the budget to do it. So we have just awarded £1,000, and they're currently using their reading ambassadors to choose those books for that cohort. What I would say is it's massively oversubscribed, but we are about to announce the launch of a foundation to help support those schools with disadvantage, which will transform what we're able to do for them. But it just means that we're really looking out for those schools who perhaps haven't got the support, the communities to be able to support them, as well as giving the tools for schools who have engaged families behind them. So there are some of the areas that you can apply for funding there. You can create a fundraiser. You can create a wish list. You can browse reading lists. You can browse books. And when you view your school page, this is what you can really do as the forward-facing hub for Reading for Pleasure. So perhaps you have a literacy page on your website. This is where you can invite people to follow your page. So it might well be that you have created new wish lists of books. Maybe it's about, your cohort loves funny books. You can create a list of funny fiction for Key Stage 2. Perhaps you've got quite a challenging number of SEN children for Key Stage 1. You might want to create something special for your individual school. And so what you can do is you can actually go to our reading lists and adopt them and add to them, or you can create your own lists from scratch. And here are just some of the reading lists right across the year groups, right across some of the key curriculum areas that this school has selected to add into the mix. But you could also use it as let's say, you've just had a child in the school who's experienced grief. We're constantly creating content there. So you can almost use this as a search engine for keywords as you're browsing the sort of titles to support, every conversation, every lesson plan, every element of the curriculum. I'm not going to enter on grief because that's just not, let's say, friendship. And you can really use that other content. You can have a selection of books there here are also some of the areas that we've talked about. So 100 brilliant books about friendship, and see some of the areas that we have developed there. So really it is about, we've invested in building something that gives schools control, enables them to corral their communities behind them, and give them a new funding stream, so that it perhaps gives them this opportunity to buy books that they might not ordinarily have had. We know it impacts wellbeing. We know with the year of reading ahead that it's never been more important. With the stats around reading for pleasure, and around, the impact, we know that when we read, everything changes, that our children are more successful, and their well-being is much healthier. So here are some of the tools to enable us to support those sort of conversations in school settings.
Deborah, there's a question for you in the chat. I'm just going to read it out. So it's from an anonymous attendee that says, "Hello and thank you for all the information. I see from your website that you currently don't work with any international schools or schools outside the UK. Is this something that's coming in the future? And if so, do you have a timescale for it?"
Yeah, great question. So we actually do work with a lot of international schools. When a school signs up, we can determine whether we can send books to them, okay, or whether they can just log in, use the content for their setting. So the challenge is international schools can't, we don't ship overseas currently. So it doesn't enable them to benefit from the 25% cashback because we don't ship overseas. But they can still become a member of the community and use the other tools, engage with the content on the portal, and use it to create reading recommendations and share them with their communities. They just can't use the funding scheme because of not being able to ship. It is something we have been looking at. We look at sporadically. The challenge is just the cost of shipping overseas is so huge. What I would say, if there are schools that are interested in having a conversation around us looking at that and seeing what it could look like, I'm very open for that. It's just, we need to identify whether it's got legs. So never say never. And if you're interested, please do connect with me after this, because I'd be interested in having a chat, because we have got a lot of overseas schools on, that 14,000 schools I mentioned. We have got a lot of overseas and international schools on there.
Deborah, can I just add to that, as having worked internationally myself for a number of years, again, there are so many parts of the website that we talked about earlier that you can use in terms of content, in terms of recommendations, in terms of, looking at, created book lists. So all of that stuff is still very much available. It's just the purchasing book side isn't. But again, you still can download the recommending reading lists, and you still can use it as an amazing tool to support learning.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there's so much of this that we know we're at crisis points, and that's why we have got the year of reading coming ahead. Reading for pleasure is at the lowest level since records began, and I think there's been so much dialogue about why that is. But at the end of the day, we know that 1 in 3 children age 8 to 18 aren't reading, and it's it doesn't get much more stark than that. And of course, what happens is children who don't read turn into adults who don't read. And we know that we've got 8.5 million adults in the UK, who struggle to read at all. And what we're trying to do through these platforms is to help people find that book, whether you're an adult, whether you're a young adult, whether you're a new adult, whether you're a grown up. We're trying to entice you with that book that's going to make you want to pick up the next book and the next one, and make you fall in love with reading. And I think so much, I know Sana and I have talked about this a lot. I think there's been a lot of discussion about the whole skill versus the will in terms of reading. and I think, I think some, in some quarters there's been a bit of sniffiness about certain books. But the thing is, if we don't, I mean, I've done it myself with my daughter when she fell in love with David Williams, in that sort of, at that stage, I wasn't a huge fan, but actually what was really key is that kept her reading for another 6 months as she became obsessed with those books, and they really inspired her, and she then moved on to other titles from there. So I think that's what we're trying to do, is to try, no matter what the reader, whether it's poetry, whether it's graphic novels, whether it's audiobooks, whether it's physical books, let's get them reading. Let's get everyone reading more.
Yeah, just to add to the back of that, Deborah, I think what you said about, how, and we've had many discussions about this, but reading in some, schools even has been, we've been so focused on the metrics for, using reading to pass children through to pass their, a SATs assessment or their phonics assessment. It's all been so skills focused that we've actually kind of taken a back step from the love of reading. The end goal is to have those young children becoming young adults, and then adults in their sort of formative years, actually engaging with books. And I think if we can develop that reading for pleasure culture so early in life, they will continue to read. I mean, there's so many stats out there that actually point to the same thing. And as we were saying earlier, where I think society is going through this sort of culture of unplugging and actually wanting to go back and pick those books up, it's really, really important that this work is done to cultivate that, way of reading. And I think as educators, where we have the first sort of like port of call and access to these children, where we're supporting them on their learning journey, whether that looks, early in their years of actually being able to access and read words, to later on when they're sort of reading for comprehension. I think the end goal really is to continue to develop them on this journey of reading for pleasure. And I think where Love Reading has so many tools to support educators with that, it's a fantastic resource. It's almost being slept on. So yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We'll have some slides just to send out with some of the screen grabs and some of the information we've given you. I'll also pop my email on there if anybody would like to pick up, have a conversation about how we can support your setting. We would be very happy to do that. Thanks again to Becky and the English Association for inviting us. You can see we're very passionate. We think we've got something quite special here that can be used to great effect. I mean, that £100,000 we've donated to schools, as well as all of this juicy content, needs to be utilised as much as possible. And we love the chat, the opportunity to get on our soapbox and chat about it some more. Thanks, Elizabeth. That's really lovely feedback. Thank you. Thanks. It's lovely to hear. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Sana. Thank you, everyone who has joined us. And because the National Year of Reading is coming up, I encourage you to just have a look at englishassociation.ac.uk/events, where you'll see we've got lots of lovely things coming up on this theme of reading and the love of reading, and how we support that in our schools and our communities. So thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you at another one of our events soon. Thank you.